Hey, it's Miss Hochstetter again. I'm going to talk about place values and rounding today. So for place values, I tutor a lot of students individually, both at school and on my own. And something that comes up often is knowing your place values and knowing where to round. So this obviously will apply in math, in geometry, or, Algebra 2. They'll ask you to round to the tenths or the hundredths place or wherever it is. In physics and science, I'm going to be asking you to round using significant figures, which I'll be talking about in a future video. So what I want to do now is just focus on the previous skill you need to know before we get into sig figs, and that is knowing your place values and rounding. So a place value represents a digit in a number on the basis of its position in the number. So we have the place value chart right here. This was also on your purple sheet that I gave you in class. So the identifying place where we start is the decimal, which is right here. And I'm sure you maybe recall this from previous science and math courses, but the ones goes next, tens, hundreds, thousand, 10,000, 100,000, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, billions, 10 billions, 100 billions. That's for the numbers above the decimal point. So each of these is a place value. You just need to know this. So you don't necessarily have to memorize it, but it will become something kind of second nature. So the ones is always the ones, tens, hundreds. After 100 comes 1,000, but you'll notice that it is 10,000. So that's what they use, and then 100,000 because they start using the previous ones to count, and that follows as well. So talking about the decimals, we have the tenths. So there isn't like a once tenths value. That's just not something. And that's because the tenths place is basically 1 over 10 would be the place value if you were to write it as a decimal. And the hundredths would be like 1 over 100 if you were to write that as a decimal. So what's key about this is the TH at the end. That signals to you that it is going to be a decimal place value. So tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and so on. Usually in most courses I've taken, you'll either round to the tenths, hundredths, or thousands. It's very rare when we round beyond that, but it does happen, so that's how you know what they are. Okay, so once you have your place values mastered, you will need to use this to round. So instructions for how to round. This is just a protocol I think is really helpful when learning how to round. Once you get better at it, you won't need to do this, but this is a nice protocol I like to use when I'm tutoring students. So underline the digit in the rounding place. Okay, so I'll talk about that in a moment. And then it says circle the digit next to the right. Circle the digit to the right. Follow the rounding rules. So if it's 4 or more, let it rest. So basically anything from 0 to 4 is going to stay the same. And anything 5 to 9 is you're going to add 1 more to it. And then you're going to change all the digits to the right of the rounding place to 0. All digits to the left remain the same. So this is just very rule-oriented and protocol-oriented, so it's best to do this with an example. So if we start with this, round 634 to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to underline the digit that I'm going to round. So that's the tens place. So this should actually say tens, not tenth. So then to the nearest tens place. So to do that, I underline the digit, I circle the digit to the right. I see if it is either a 0 to 4 where it stays the same or a 5 to 9 where we add 1 more. In this case, it's going to stay the same because it's a 4. So what we do is all the digits to the right of the place will become a 0, and all the digits to the left will remain the same. So 6 and 3 is the one that we're either going to add 1 to or we're going to keep the same. Since it was a 4, it's going to stay a 3, and that circled number is going to become a 0. So that would be this rounded to the tens. Another example, let's just do 636 and round to the tens. So in this case, we underline the tens, We circle the one to the right. We see that it's a 5 or bigger, so we're going to add 1 to this place value, to the tens. So it becomes 6, 4, and then of course everything after becomes a 0. So that would be your answer in this case. And you can do this for any of the place values, whether it's the tens, hundreds, millions, or if it's like tenth, and so on. Okay, so the next one, we're going to round this one to the ones. So this is the ones place value. I look at the number to the right. I see that it's a 0. So that means this 1 is just going to stay the same. So this would just round to that. And then there would be no decimal because everything afterward becomes a 0. So that would be the answer, which is the same as number 7 in the online quiz that you have been working on. Okay, so this one to the 10,000ths. So this is the tenths, this is the hundredths, this is the thousandths, and this is the 10,000ths. So this is the one I'm going to be rounding to. And I circle the one to the right. It's it's 5 or greater, so that means I'm going to add 1 here. So this becomes 12.0081. And that would be my answer to this. Let's see. I'm going to give another example. So if we have a number like 1990 and I say round to the hundreds, well, what happens? Okay, so this is the hundreds place. This is what I'm going to look at. So this again is 5, between 5 and 9, so that means this one gets added 1 to. And so we take our 9 and we add 1 to it and it becomes 10. Oh no, what do we do? Well, this then is it's like this will become 10, and so that changes this to 20, and everything else goes down. Because this 9 became like basically a 0 down, and we carried the 1, and then the 1 and the 1 became 2,000. So that's how you would do it that way. So that sometimes can happen, and sometimes it throws people off, I think, but you just would move the place value over 1 if it was a 9 in that situation. All right, I think that is all I have for now. So tune in next time.